I will take you there and bring you back to the notes. So today you're going to learn about the 3 Chinese philosophies, Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism, and how they kind of got started and what they believed in and what they believed was the best way to influence a society. And so basically what was happening in China at the time was after the Shang dynasty ended, the Zhao dynasty took over. And at the end of those years of the Zhao dynasty, people started to argue over what was the best way to run a society, what was the best way to maintain peace and order in society. And so three big philosophies kind of stood out. And those 3 philosophies, like I said, were Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. So during the Zhao dynasty, just to give you a little bit of background about the Zhao dynasty, after overthrowing the Shang dynasty, the Zhao established their own dynasty to rule over China. To justify their conquest, they claimed that they had been given the mandate of heaven, a divine right to rule China. So remember, we talked about mandates of heaven in class the other day. Basically, they're saying that God said we're supposed to be in charge. Okay, and so that's what a mandate of heaven says. And what they did is they installed a system called feudalism. We talked about feudalism as well. Basically, they gave all their relatives and all their friends all the land in China to run, and a portion of their taxes or their crops were supposed to go to the emperor and to the Zhao family. And so the problem with the feudal system is that once people establish themselves in a certain area, they gain more and more power, and that causes people to think that they can overrun the government or take over from the emperor. And so it says, although the feudal system maintained political stability in China for a time, the system began to break down in the 1700s because the lords became more ambitious and wanted more power, right? And so this brought a whole time of 250 years of disorder in China afterward. And they called that the Warring States period. Okay, and so basically they were just fighting with each other over power. So the Zhao family basically gave out all this land and all this for people to run and pay them. But it turned out that those people turned on the Zhao dynasty because they thought they could be more powerful. Okay, and so that led to people starting to think about what's the best way to run a society. This is where those philosophies come into play. Okay, so the first philosophy that we're going to talk about is Confucianism. So I'm just going to kind of read to you guys from the text here. It says, Confucianism is based on the teachings of Confuci, who was called Confucius by the Western society. This philosophy deeply influenced Chinese government and culture. The founder of Confucianism was a guy named Confucius, right? Lived from about 551 to 479 BCE. He was born in the small state of Lu in eastern China, and he experienced firsthand the disorder that erupted when lords fought for power. Between 722 and 481 BCE, his own state was invaded many times. Confucius deeply respected Chinese traditions such as the reverence for ancestors and learning. However, he also realized that society and government needed to evolve if peace and order were to exist. Specifically, rulers needed to govern wisely. Confucius wanted to educate men of good character to serve society as honest and fair government officials. So he said, first thing we need to do is we need to have good leadership, right? So we need good people to be running everything, not selfish, greedy, power-hungry people, right? So the teachings of Confucianism says the goal of Confucianism was to achieve a just and peaceful society. Confucius taught that society worked well when all people used standards of good behavior in their roles and in their relationships with others. So if we do the right things, we'll have the right leaders. It says, according to Confucianism, there are 5 basic relationships between people: ruler and subject, husband and wife, father and son, older sibling and younger sibling, and friend. All people must respect and obey those who are above them in status. In particular, they must respect their elders. In return, those with authority, such as rulers, fathers, husbands, and older siblings, must set a good example. They should be kind, honest, wise, and faithful. Confucius instructed, do not do to others what you would not want done to you. That's kind of like the golden rule, right? But opposite. But basically what he's saying is younger people or people that are below others should show respect. But also those people who are in charge, like rulers and fathers and husbands, they should be setting a good example for them. So that's what they mean by the right behaviors, right? Doing the right things and showing the right way to do things so that others can follow. The influence of Confucianism. The philosophy of Confucius attracted a number of students who spread his ideas and teachings. After his death, some of these students collected his sayings in a book called the Analects. Later, scholars further developed Confucianism. Confucianism had a very practical effect on the government of later dynasty, the Han Dynasty. In China, civil servants were traditionally the sons of nobles. However, that did not ensure that they had the ability and the wisdom to do their jobs well. The influence of Confucianism led Han leaders to hire civil servants on the basis of their ability. So not just whoever is related to, but who's going to be best at the job. Said to be qualified, government workers were expected to know that the Chinese classic texts in detail. For example, they studied these teachings to learn the proper behavior required of people in the various roles in society, from laborers to government officials. To prove the candidates retained this knowledge, they had to take exams that the emperor himself might grade. So this is similar to just like going to school. We hire people who go to school for their certain job, right? That hasn't changed in society now. It says the teachings of Confucius had a major influence on Chinese culture. Values such as respect for elders, proper behavior, and love of scholarship became deeply woven into Chinese society. Even today, the sayings of Confucius are wise and practical. Here are two examples from the Analects. It says, Confucius said to his followers, the gentleman first practices what he preaches and then preaches what he practices. So he's saying, first you have to set a good example before people will listen to you, right? Confucius said to his student, shall I teach you what knowledge is? When you know a thing, say that you know it. When you do not know a thing, admit that you do not know it. That is knowledge. So he's saying knowledge is understanding that you're not going to know everything and you still always have more to learn. All right, let's go back to to our notes and fill those in. All right, here's our notes. We are on section 2 about Confucianism. And here's what we got. Remember, you can pause at any time if I'm going too fast. Okay, so we're going to answer questions 1 through 5 here. Number 1 says, who is Confucius? And he was a philosopher whose teachings influenced Chinese government and culture, right? Number 2 says, what was China like during his lifetime? China was in chaos, right, during the warring states period. Number 3 is, according to Confucius, what are the 5 basic relationships? Those are ruler and subject, husband and wife, father and son, older sibling and younger sibling, and friend and friend. Number 4, how should people act in these basic relationships? People must respect and obey those above them in status, but those in power must set a good example. And then number 5 says, what influence did Confucius have on Chinese government? Government jobs were no longer given only to sons of nobles, right? They were given to whoever earned them, right? You had to earn those roles. Feel free to pause.